Trogdor the board game is a 30-minute game for 1 to 6 players in which you take turns controlling the Burninator himself, Trogdor. Burninate the countryside, the peasants, and the thatched roof cottages to win the game. Take the role of the cult of hooded creepos, the keepers of Trogdor, in this cooperative game of destruction. In Trogdor the board game, players take turns controlling Trogdor's actions through their member of the keepers of Trogdor. At the start of the game, each player will have chosen a keeper of Trogdor and an item of Trogdor, which grants you special abilities. Players also start with an action card from the deck, which gives Trogdor action points and other abilities. The players win the game if all 4 of the following conditions are met at the same time. Every tile of the countryside is burninated, all 3 cottages are burninated, no peasants remain on the board, and Trogdor is not defeated. But be careful. If Trogdor takes damage while no peasants remain on the Trog meter, you lose the game. There are 2 phases to each player's turn: Trogdor's actions and the board's actions. During the first phase, draw an action card from the deck and place it next to your current action card. Choose one of your 2 cards to play, then discard it. If you don't like a card, you can discard it to get 5 action points instead of using that card's special ability. Next, use your action points in one of 6 ways: move, chomp, burrow, hide, burninate, or pass. To move, Trogdor takes 1 step to an adjacent tile to the north, east, south, or west, not diagonally, unless a card says you can. If Trogdor steps onto a tile with a knight, he takes 1 point of damage. To chomp, remove a peasant from the tile Trogdor is standing on and place it in the Trog meter. This is how Trogdor regains health. To burrow, move Trogdor from one tunnel tile to the other. To hide, lay Trogdor down while standing on a mountain tile. For the rest of the turn, Trogdor can't be hurt by knight or archer damage. Trogdor can burninate an unburninated tile, cottage, or peasant. You have to be on the same tile as the thing you're burninating. To burninate a tile, flip it over. The lake can only be burninated if the tiles to its north, east, south, and west are also burninated. If the lake is along an edge, you don't have to burninate as many tiles. To burninate a cottage, flip it over. This can only be done if the cottage tile and all adjacent and diagonal tiles are also burninated. Just like with the lake, a cottage on an edge requires fewer tiles to be burninated. Certain action cards allow Trogdor to burninate from a distance. You can ignore regular burninating restrictions with these cards. However, these cards only apply to tiles unless it says otherwise on the card. To burninate a peasant, start by crowning it with the flame helmet. This is an important part of the ceremony. Do not skip it. Draw a card from the movement deck and use the movement path on the right. The flaming peasant moves along that path, burninating every tile along the way if able, including its starting tile. At the end of its movement, return the flame helmet to the Trog meter and place the peasant in the void. Peasants in the void do not return to play, meaning Trogdor can't recover that health, so burninate wisely. If the flaming peasant runs into the lake, the peasant stops its movement and survives. If the flaming peasant runs into a cottage, the cottage becomes burninated if its tile and the surrounding tiles are also burninated. If the flaming peasant ends its movement on an already burninated cottage, draw a new movement card and ignite him again. If the flaming peasant runs into a tile with another peasant, that peasant also burninates, even if they both started on the same tile. Turn the second peasant on its side. When the previous peasant is done with its burnination, flip the other one back up and crown it with the flame helmet. Draw a new movement card for any newly burninated peasants, and be sure to deal with their movements 1 peasant at a time. If you have unspent action points but would like to end your turn, you can pass. In the second phase of a player's turn, the board takes actions. Don't forget that this phase is still part of a player's turn, so any effects that happen during that player's turn are still in effect. It is also important to note that all meeples except Trogdor have wraparound movement, meaning if they leave the board from one side, they appear on the other. First, draw a movement card. Spawn peasants by consulting the image in the top left of the card. Top up the board until it has the same number of peasants as the card by placing peasants from the Trog meter on unoccupied, unburninated cottages. If there aren't enough unoccupied, unburninated cottages, you don't add those peasants. If there are more of those cottages than there are peasants that need to be added, you can choose which of those cottages the peasants spawn on. Next, move all peasants on the board one tile in the direction shown on the bottom left of the movement card you drew for this phase. If the movement card says move and repair, the peasants unburninate any burninated tiles they land on, but not cottages. Next, move the knights according to the movement path to the right of the card you drew for this phase, one knight at a time. If a knight starts, stops, or moves through a tile with a burninated cottage, the knight repairs the cottage to its unburninated state. If a knight enters Trogdor's tile, or vice versa, Trogdor takes 1 point of damage. Move one peasant from the Trog meter onto the void. If the Trog meter has no peasants when you try to remove a peasant for this reason, the damage defeats him. You don't take damage for starting a turn in the same tile as a knight. Trogdor takes no damage if you use an action to hide. Lastly, move the archers according to the same movement path as the knights. Instead of dealing damage by touching Trogdor's tile, the archers shoot arrows both forward and backward when their movement stops, based on the direction of the last step they took. If Trogdor is in the line of fire, he takes a point of damage. The arrow's path does not include the archer's tile. Again, Trogdor takes no damage if he used an action to hide. When Trogdor takes his first point of damage, shuffle the 7 Trog-Hammer cards into the action deck. The Trog-Hammer acts as a third knight that can potentially move on Trogdor's phase, as well as the board's phase. When you draw a Trog-Hammer card for the first time, place the Trog-Hammer on the center tile. If the Trog-Hammer is already in play when you draw a Trog-Hammer card, move him by immediately drawing a movement card and taking the path shown. This could happen multiple times on the same turn. The Trog-Hammer also moves on the board phase, using the same rules as the knights. If the Trog-Hammer spawns on or stops on a tile with a knight or archer, move him again. Trogdor starts with 4 peasants on his Trog meter, representing his health. If Trogdor chomps a peasant, he gains health. Move that peasant from the board to the Trog meter. When Trogdor takes damage, move 1 peasant from the Trog meter to the void. Losing a peasant when it spawns onto the board isn't damage, so the effects that are triggered by damage, such as adding the Trog-Hammer cards to the deck or Trogdor's defeat, are not triggered when a peasant spawns. Trogdor is defeated when he takes damage from a knight or archer while at 0 health, or when all players have no action cards remaining. Instead of losing the game immediately, Trogdor first goes into a fiery rage, which is a final chance at complete burnination. When Trogdor enters his fiery rage, draw 5 movement cards, and move Trogdor along their movement paths 1 card at a time. During his movement, anything he touches, including whatever is on his starting tile, is burninated. Normal restrictions for burninating the lake and cottages are removed during Trogdor's fiery rage, and any peasants that are burninated during this rage are instantly removed from the game. If Trogdor succeeds in burninating the countryside, peasants, and cottages during this rage, then the players are victorious. Otherwise, Trogdor rage quits, and you lose the game. Here are some special rules and reminders. Cottage tiles burninate the same as any other tile. Cottages stay burninated when the surrounding tiles get unburninated. There are tiles that contain flowers, forests, stumps, and trees that are referred to on some cards, which otherwise are normal tiles. If a card refers to an empty tile, it means a tile that contains no pieces. No knights, Trog-Hammer, archers, peasants, cottages, or Trogdor. All tiles retain their properties, even when burninated. The abilities of your keeper and item cards can only be used on your turn, in either of the 2 phases. Keeper abilities are always available to you, but most items need to be recharged. This recharge condition must be met on your turn, not another player's turn. An item can only be used once per turn, but could be recharged the same turn that it's used. Some cards were made by Strong Bad and were not play tested. These may break the game, so only use them if all players agree to it. To begin a game of Trogdor the board game, make a 5x5 grid of unburninated countryside tiles. There are 6 suggested maps of different difficulties in the rulebook, or you can make your own or randomly distribute them. Place the 2 knights and the archers on the board, either in the predetermined spot from the suggested maps or in a place of your choosing. Place the 3 thatched roof cottages unburninated side up on the cottage tiles and place 1 peasant in each of those tiles. Place the Trog meter close by, with the remaining 4 peasants, the Trog-Hammer, and the Flame Helmet. Set aside the 7 Trog-Hammer cards and shuffle the remaining action cards to form the action deck, and movement cards to form the movement deck. Place the Void nearby. Pick a Trogdor meeple and place it in the center tile. Each player picks a keeper of Trogdor and an item of the keepers of Trogdor and draws 1 action card. Pick a player to start. We're Games Explained, and that's how to play Trogdor!